Rome, a city built on 7 hills in the middle of a swamp. Legend has it that it was founded by Romulus, who killed his twin brother Remus, after the two of them were raised by a she-wolf. Now obviously this story is complete nonsense, but it does illustrate how ancient Rome was a completely mythical place. The earliest Romans were a small tribe of Italian people, who over time absorbed the influence of the nearby Greeks and Etruscans.
Nice.
By the 6th century BC, the Romans had grown from a small village into a city-state that dominated central Italy. Their system of government, the Roman Republic, was a monarchy in name only. Power was actually held by an elite class of landowning nobles called patricians. The common folk, known as plebeians, had very few rights, and were largely excluded from politics. But they did have one major advantage: the right to elect officials called consuls, who were responsible for running the government. Initially, these consuls were only temporary dictators, but over time their power grew and grew until eventually they became a permanent fixture of Roman society. This system of government worked surprisingly well, and it allowed Rome to conquer all of Italy by the end of the 3rd century BC, but everyone knows that the Romans were great conquerors. After defeating Carthage in a series of 3 wars known as the Punic Wars, Rome emerged as the dominant power in the Western Mediterranean. This victory came at a cost, however, as Rome was now stuck fighting a constant series of wars on the expensive province of Hispania. So in 146 BC, the Roman Senate made the controversial decision to declare Hispania a conquered province, stripping its inhabitants of their citizenship and subjecting them to Roman rule. Throughout the late Republic, Rome would be torn apart by civil war and political instability, mostly because the rich and powerful wanted more power. Eventually, this instability would lead to the end of the Republic and the rise of the Roman Empire. In 27 BC, Octavian, better known as Augustus, would become the first emperor of Rome, marking the beginning of a new era for the city. Now, obviously, Rome's greatest achievement during the Republic was conquering a bunch of land and subjecting other people to their rule. But during the Pax Romana, which lasted from 27 BC to 180 AD, Rome would accomplish a lot more. Under the rule of Augustus and his successors, Rome would build impressive public works throughout their empire, including roads, aqueducts, and public buildings. They also developed a sophisticated legal system that was relatively fair and impartial. And they created a thriving culture that influenced the entire Mediterranean world. Roman architecture, art, and literature continue to inspire awe and wonder even today. Despite this cultural flowering, however, there were still a lot of problems in Roman society. Slavery was still widespread and the gap between the rich and poor was growing. And while the Pax Romana had brought peace to the empire, it hadn't brought stability. A series of weak or corrupt emperors periodically destabilized the empire and led to civil war and unrest. In the 3rd century AD, the empire faced its greatest crisis yet. Economic decline, political instability, and a series of barbarian invasions nearly brought Rome to its knees. In 284, Emperor Diocletian divided the empire into 2 halves in an attempt to make it easier to manage. This division would have a number of negative consequences in the long run. However, as it led to a fragmentation of the Roman world, as the Western Roman Empire continued to decline, it became increasingly dependent on the wealth and manpower of the East. By the 5th century, the Western Roman Empire was being propped up entirely by the Eastern Roman Empire. And in 476, the last Western Roman emperor was deposed by a Germanic general named Odoacer. Now, traditionally, this date is seen as the fall of ancient Rome, but really Rome didn't fall so much as fade away, as most of the old Roman provinces remained intact, and their local populations continued to identify themselves as Roman. The Eastern Roman Empire, later renamed the Byzantine Empire, would survive for another 1,000 years. And the legacy of ancient Rome can still be seen in the art, architecture, and culture of modern Italy and the rest of Europe. So what's the lesson here? If you want to build a successful city, it helps if you do and start with a bunch of kings and queens and instead opt for a representative. Democracy. Also, invading other countries isn't always a good idea. Ancient Rome was one of the most powerful and influential civilizations in the ancient world. They conquered vast amounts of land, and their culture, art, and literature continued to inspire awe and wonder even today. Despite their many accomplishments, however, Rome would eventually fall victim to the same problems that have plagued every other empire in history: economic decline, political instability, and a failure to adapt to changing circumstances. Still, the legacy of ancient Rome lives on in the modern world. Their innovations and accomplishments continue to shape our world today, and their story is a reminder of the power and the fragility of human civilization. Hey, you made it to the end of the video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and subscribe if you want to see more. Thanks again, and see you next time.